The day I got accepted into my dream university, my parents smiled, but not because of me. They had already decided my college fund would pay for my golden brother's future instead. Years later, after they spent every dollar on his luxury wedding, they knocked on my door and asked me for money. They had no idea who I had become. Daniel Carter stood frozen on the front porch, staring at the acceptance letter from the University of Michigan. His hands trembled as he read the words again and again. After years of studying late into the night, working part-time jobs, and dreaming of a better future, he had finally earned his place. His mother smiled when she saw the envelope, but it wasn't the proud smile he had imagined. His father barely looked up from his phone before saying they needed to discuss something important. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, expecting congratulations. Instead, his father quietly explained that the money saved for Daniel's college had already been used. Confused, Daniel asked where it had gone. His younger brother, Ryan, walked into the room wearing an expensive designer jacket, grinning from ear to ear. Their mother proudly announced that Ryan had proposed to his girlfriend and they had decided to give him the entire college fund so he could have the wedding of his dreams. Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. Years of sacrifice had disappeared in a single conversation. His father leaned back and said, "College can wait, family comes first." Daniel looked down at the acceptance letter, realizing that, in this family, he had never come first. Daniel spent the entire night staring at the acceptance letter lying on his desk. Every memory of working double shifts, skipping vacations, and refusing to buy things he wanted came rushing back. He had believed every dollar his parents saved was meant for his education, but now he understood it had never truly belonged to him. The next morning, he quietly packed a small suitcase. Without arguing or begging, he walked downstairs. His mother noticed the bag and casually asked where he was going. Daniel answered, "If there's no place for my future here, there's no reason for me to stay." His father barely looked away from the television before saying, "You'll come back when you realize how hard life really is." Ryan laughed and joked that Daniel was being dramatic over just a little money. Those words hurt more than losing the college fund. Daniel placed the house key on the table, thanked them for raising him, and walked out the front door without looking back. As he reached the end of the driveway, he silently promised himself that one day he would build a life so successful that he would never have to depend on anyone again. He wasn't leaving with money, but he was leaving with something far more valuable, his determination. The first few months were brutal. Daniel slept on a worn-out couch in the tiny apartment of an old family friend while working every job he could find. During the day, he loaded delivery trucks, and at night he cleaned office buildings after everyone had gone home. Every paycheck was carefully divided between rent, food, and savings. While exhaustion followed him everywhere, he refused to let disappointment become an excuse. One evening, while delivering supplies to a small technology company, he noticed their outdated inventory system crashing repeatedly. After finishing his delivery, he politely offered a simple solution he had taught himself through free online courses. The owner was impressed and invited Daniel to help fix the problem. What was supposed to be a one-day job turned into a full-time opportunity. Daniel spent every evening learning new skills, reading business books, and improving the company's systems. Within 2 years, he was promoted to operations manager. By the time he turned 30, he had saved enough money to launch his own logistics software company. His business grew faster than anyone expected, signing contracts with major retailers across the country. While his family celebrated Ryan's expensive lifestyle on social media, they had no idea that the son they had abandoned was quietly building a future far greater than the one they had taken away. 5 years passed without a single phone call from Daniel's family. He never expected one. His company had grown into a respected business, and the young man who once left home with a single suitcase now owned a beautiful house overlooking the lake. One quiet Saturday morning, his phone suddenly rang. The caller ID displayed his mother's name. Daniel stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Her voice sounded unusually warm, as if nothing had ever happened. She asked how he had been and then excitedly announced that Ryan's wedding was only a month away. Before Daniel could respond, she said the family wanted him there because family should always be together during important moments. Daniel remained silent, sensing there was more to the conversation. His father took the phone and cleared his throat. Ryan's wedding has become more expensive than we expected, he admitted. You've done well for yourself, and we thought, maybe you could help pay for it. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering the day they had taken away his future without a second thought. After years of silence, they hadn't called to apologize or rebuild their relationship. They had called because they needed his money. At that moment, Daniel realized this wasn't an invitation to a wedding, it was another test of his worth in the eyes of the people who had always chosen someone else over him. Daniel arrived at the wedding venue wearing a simple dark blue suit. He wasn't there because of the invitation, he was there to finally close a painful chapter of his life. The luxurious ballroom was decorated with crystal chandeliers, white roses, and golden lights. Ryan proudly welcomed wealthy guests, completely ignoring Daniel until their mother rushed over with a forced smile. She hugged him as if the last 5 years had never happened and quietly whispered, "I'm so glad you came." A few minutes later, his father pulled him aside and handed him a folder containing unpaid invoices from the wedding planner, caterer, and venue manager. "We're short nearly $100,000, he admitted. "If you pay these bills today, we'll consider everything in the past forgotten." Daniel looked at the papers, then at the father who had once told him college could wait because family came first. Around them, guests laughed, music played, and cameras flashed, but Daniel felt completely calm. He slowly closed the folder and handed it back. Looking directly into his father's eyes, he said quietly, "You already spent the money that was meant for my future. I'm not paying for someone else's." The smile disappeared from every face around him as the silence spread across the ballroom. Ryan stepped forward, his face burning with anger. "So this is what you came here for," he shouted. "To embarrass us in front of everyone?" Daniel calmly shook his head. "No, Ryan. I came because Mom said family should be together." The room fell silent. Several guests looked at one another, sensing there was more to the story. Daniel slowly turned toward the crowd and said, 5 years ago, I received a letter saying I had been accepted into my dream university. The money my parents promised for my education was given to Ryan instead, so he could live the life he wanted. I left home with nothing but that acceptance letter. His mother immediately began crying, begging him not to continue, but Daniel wasn't speaking out of anger. He was simply telling the truth. The groom's family listened in disbelief as whispers spread across the ballroom. Ryan's fiancée stared at him, shocked that she had never heard this story. She quietly asked, "Is this true?" Ryan lowered his head, unable to answer. Daniel looked at his parents one final time and said, "I didn't come here for revenge. I came so you would finally understand the price of choosing one child while forgetting another." Without raising his voice, he placed the untouched wedding invitation on the table, wished everyone a happy future, and slowly walked toward the exit, leaving behind a room filled with regret and uncomfortable silence. Daniel drove away without looking back. In his rearview mirror, the grand wedding venue slowly disappeared, taking years of pain with it. For the first time since leaving home, he felt completely free. He didn't win because he was richer. He didn't win because his family suffered. He won because he finally stopped chasing the approval of people who had never valued him. Behind him, the wedding fell apart. Ryan's fiancée quietly removed her engagement ring and told him she could not marry a man who had built his happiness on someone else's sacrifice. Many guests left before the ceremony even began, disappointed by the truth they had witnessed. Richard and Linda sat alone in the empty ballroom, realizing they hadn't just lost a wedding, they had lost the trust of the only son who had loved them unconditionally. Weeks later, Richard visited Daniel's office with no excuses, no requests, and no expectations. He simply said, "I spent my whole life investing in the wrong future. I hope one day you'll allow me to earn back even a small part of your trust." Daniel looked out the window for a long moment before quietly replying, "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once. It's something you prove every day." Richard nodded with tears in his eyes and walked away, understanding that some mistakes cannot be erased overnight. As Daniel watched him leave, he smiled softly. The greatest revenge had never been making his family lose. It had been building a life so meaningful that he no longer needed their approval to know his own worth.